we figured a couple of years ago, everything was going to boil down to, maybe a handful, 6 or 10 different devices that everybody would just, sort of land on because they have the highest performance. But it's actually gone the opposite direction in the last couple of years. We see a lot of different things coming at us.
The Vape Escape. Vaping remains a popular consumption method. However, filling and capping cannabis oil cartridges is a fine art. It also takes a lot of precision engineering to get the right amount of product into them and comply with GMP regulations and other international standards. Hogan, founder and CEO of Portland, Oregon-based Thompson Duke Industrial, and sales director Vlad Valme discuss the joys of one size not fitting all and explore how cannabis never fails to present the right sort of challenges for an inquiring mind.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Lobsterpot podcast. I'm Dave Barton, ably assisted, or I'll say flanked by, my co-host and co-founder of Thermidor, Jamie Bonthron. How are you doing today, Jamie?
I'm very well. It's toward the end of a Monday. I've made it through, but it's been a good day, very productive, and looking forward to the rest of the week.
Well, I'm glad you are, because, I suppose I am too. Let's be cool. But we have, to brighten our week, to start everything off in the right way, we have two guests today, which I went very high then, didn't I? Two guests we have today. We have two gentlemen from a company called Thompson Duke, based out of Portland, Oregon. We have Managing Director Hogan, and we have our sales director from Thompson Duke, Vlad Valme. So say hi, guys.
Hi, Dave. Hey, Jamie. How are you doing?
We're all right, I think. But yeah, how is it? What is it? So, Hogan, you're up in Portland, Oregon. Vlad, you're down in California. So I'm guessing you've got two different types of weather going on today. But if you want to just say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself. Just start with Vlad. Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day work, and then we'll move on to Hogan, and we'll sort of take it from there. So we're kind of playing with the format today. It's kind of cool to have two guests. So if we're a little bit like, don't worry, it's not being rude. We're just trying to get everyone in. That's cool. So Vlad, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Vlad, Director of Sales at Thompson Duke Industrial. Really focus on outreach to our current clients and making sure that they're happy with our machinery, and also looking ahead at what future markets might bring, like Europe. We're strongly interested in being in the European market and seeing how that rolls out, along with the states that are continuing to roll out here in the U.S. So just staying ahead of the trends and following as vaping changes the market, pretty much landscape.
Excellent. And Hogan, Managing Director. So tell us about you. So you started the company, and your focus is very much on the vaping industry or vaping cartridges. How did you come upon that, and what is the role that you guys fulfill in that?
Well, we got into manufacturing vape filling machines and mouthpiece fastening solutions from our parent company, which is a controls automation engineering company. We did some automation for an extractor many years ago, and most of the extractors were manual at the time. And then we also did some support for startup for those machines, and we were finding people would have kilos of oil and boxes of cartridges and really no way of filling them efficiently. So we developed a filling machine at that time. And then since then we've developed a smaller machine because we want to be able to support companies that are just getting going. And there's a lot of those. And then moved on to being very efficient at filling. We found that the bottleneck would move down to the mouthpiece fastening. So we developed machines for that. And now we're focusing on more of the front end for the cartridge handling when it comes out of the box onto the machine. So we've got several machines that we manufacture and sell specifically for vape filling.
I mean, it still feels like a very new thing here. I mean, vaping here in the UK, I guess. When we had the smoking ban, was it 2007? Was it, Jamie, here in the UK? I think so.
Yeah,
I remember because I was smoking at the time, and I thought, damn, I'm not going to be able to go into a pub and have a cigarette anymore. But again, that was a good incentive to start the ball rolling and quit smoking. But but vaping kind of took off after I stopped smoking. So it was kind of like, so the idea of what it is and how it manifests and how that whole thing came together was always a bit like, I've kind of missed this part of what's happening. But I guess in the US and now with the kind of, both medicinal and recreational use cannabis, is it as popular, do you think, as kind of, combustion smoking cannabis, the sort of vape sector? Is that, are you seeing more and more? What's the kind of culturally, how prevalent is vaping, I guess, and vaping cannabis in particular? You take that one, Vlad?
Yeah, well, I'd say I believe that vaping is probably one of the topper tiers categories in the cannabis space. Vaping and edibles, I think we're seeing are probably the two popular, and vaping steadily growing. So it's one of the categories that we have a lot of interest in because it works, it's effective. So as more and more people try it, I think it sustains its customers and attracts new customers on a regular basis.
I'm really interested. You mentioned Hogan, at the start, you said that when you first kind of set up, you found a lot of people that had a ton of oil and, a load of cartridges and, like this, no way to put it together. Do you still go out, or maybe Vlad as sales director, do you still go out and find what I'm sure are quite DIY setups in people's places, or is that kind of past now? Is it developed enough that people do have the right stuff in place?
There are some companies that are still filling by hand when they start out and they're smaller. They don't need to fill that many cartridges, so they'll spend, maybe dedicate a day or two with a team of a couple of people. They're small little, handheld guns that can work pretty well. Once you start moving into trying to be much more accurate for filling and just cleaner, more efficient, they'll start out with like a semi-automatic machine. And then, but there are still quite a few companies that are just getting going, small craft, outfits. And we'll see those in the medical markets that are emerging. And then also in some of the recreational, like New York, New Jersey, are coming on pretty strong right now. So we still see what we used to see a long time ago. And we're also seeing what we would consider to be chaos with the cartridges. There's a lot of different cartridges that are out there, dozens of different form factors that we have to accommodate. And so Vlad sees a lot of that. He's an expert in the cartridge form factors. So it's still the same for us. And then we have large operations that run several of our automatic machines all day long. And they're doing, hundreds of thousands of cartridges, even on a weekly basis.
I suppose it's similar almost to like a small brewery who would, handball or hand can. It's the same process, isn't it? Ultimately, and once they get to a certain scale, they realize that I guess they can't carry on doing that, or particularly accuracy and cleanliness.
Yeah. And, small breweries are usually what we would consider to be craft, very, very high quality. So we also have seen quite a bit of change in the oil formulations, and Vlad can talk a little bit about, what we've seen over the last years about that.
Well, I was going to ask on that note regarding, what is the actual product that is going on? Is it simply the oil that's been extracted, or is it some sort of distillate that's been hydrated, or is it a variety of different things? Or I'm kind of curious about that. It's not something I know a great deal about.
Yeah, so there are a variety of products that are in vapes. When you're talking about THC, a lot of it is mostly distillate. That's just distilled down from the plant, isolated, and you have THC in an oil form. Sometimes people are using CBD isolate, and they might be mixing that with a variety of other products, which we always frown upon. And what we're seeing now, though, is more of a need and a want to preserve not only just the THC in the plant, but the terpenes and the other compounds that create the effect that you would normally get, let's say, from smoking the joint as opposed to consuming the oil. So now you're getting more higher grade oils, oils like rosin, which don't use any solvent and is just practically pressed out of the plant with heat and pressure. creating a really pure, almost like a virgin olive oil of.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that. I was going to ask, is it? You can compare it then to sort of like olive oil. Like, you have first press, you have cold press, you have, the sort of first batch, which is like, supreme. Then you have the next kind of thing as you kind of, it is similar kind of principle.
It is extremely very similar. And the qualities are definitely way above and beyond than what you can find in distillate. And on the opposite side of that, if you are using solvents to extract, there are live resin, which is using a mixture of solvents sometimes to extract a plant at its freshest state and to get an oil that is similar to rosin, but just a different process of trying to get there. For me, I like the solventless, but there's different ways to do it.
It's really it's interesting. You speaking about the different ways of people are doing things, and particularly with there being no set standard really for a lot of the things that you're trying to fill. I think we spoke to Hogan previously. We met you guys over in Berlin, and we're talking about the fact that you guys produce a huge range and variety in your machines in order to meet the demands of all your customers. A lot of parts of the industry would love standardization. A lot of, be it pharma or governments, they'd love standardization because it makes their lives really easy. Would it be better or worse for you guys if you saw, if let's say you got, federal standardization of mouthpieces? Real hypothetical question, but would that be good, or do you think that would create problems, wider in the market?
I think as far as devices are concerned, it would be easier for us for sure, because then it would narrow down these dozens of different devices that we have to accommodate down to just a few. It'd be very simple for us and easier, I think, for our clients. We find that our clients are changing devices pretty often. Every year or so, something will come along, and even if they're a large multi-state operator, they'll shift over to something that's just a little bit different. The guts inside are almost all the same functionally, but trying to differentiate a brand by a form factor, something that looks a little bit different, is really key to some of the brands, and that's what we see. So it would be easier if everything was sort of the same form factor. And actually, we got close here in the U.S. a few years ago. Things were narrowing down to one type of cartridge, and then after that, things went chaotic again. So we're flexible enough to accommodate anything. I think what we'll see in the European market will be ones that are approved, CE certified, and there will only be a few of those, especially at the beginning.
I was going to say, why is there such a wide variety of devices? Is it simply economy of scale? Like we tried this one, we can get it cheaper from these guys, so therefore we'll go with that. We have a different system. So is it essentially as cut and dry as that?
It can be performance on the devices. Some of them may have, failure rates, and the failure rates could be anything from just damage out of the package to, leaking issues, and the customer experience. So, that could be one of them. But the main one, I think, and Vlad, hop in here, is to differentiate your brand from other people at the dispensary, at the store. Yeah. And having that customer experience being the same every single time, and to have something that just looks a little bit different than everything else that's out there. Right. We see one manufacturer keeps coming out with more different pod styles, and the distributors here in the U.S. are like, "Well, we didn't know this was coming," and so then they go out and they have to market these things and just see what sticks in the market. I think is really what that approach is, right, Vlad? Yeah,
I agreed with you. I think the brands are really looking for a way to maintain their customers, and they do that by the look and the feel of the product that they're giving them. So the different devices allows them to create the environment that they want.
So it's not just the quality of the oil, but it's also the aesthetics of the experience for the customer. Is really what we're finding here. And we figured a couple of years ago everything was going to boil down to maybe a handful, 6 or 10 different devices that everybody would just sort of land on because they have the highest performance. But it's actually gone the opposite direction in the last couple of years. We see a lot of different things coming at us.
I think that's particularly interesting when it comes to the medical market, certainly in Europe, where it's very nascent and there's a lack of choice, certainly when it comes to things like flour and the same. We have lots of vape, normal liquid, e-liquid that people are vaping, but it almost feels like from a medical side, there's a real lack of choice. So how that will play out here, I think, is quite interesting in that it almost polarizes the experience you're having at the moment, where you have this wide open market where people can do anything and they can deliver anything to a customer, providing that there's a demand for it. Whereas here, it feels like it'll be a lot more limited. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that are, moving
Absolutely.
to the medical side of things.
Yeah, Jamie, you're absolutely right. What we're finding, and we've been spending some time with, people from Israel and Germany, in different locations, in particular the German market. For the medical side, the device will have to be approved basically as a pharmaceutical medical device. It doesn't exist right now. It'll not only have to be CE certified, but all of the materials will have to be approved by the government. We don't see that here in the US because our federal government's not involved, and each state doesn't really scrutinize it. Even Canada doesn't do that on a federal level, but Germany is definitely going to do that. So we've been working with some companies to try to identify what devices would be qualified in order to be used in the German medical market coming up. And the medicine that's being used has already been approved, been formulated, and there's some companies in Israel who have some fantastic medicine, but they need the device. And it's been difficult. So Vlad and I have been spending quite a bit of time over the last 6 months talking to all the manufacturers in China, because that's really where all of the devices, almost all of them, come from. To qualify the factory to begin with, is your manufacturing certification qualified? And then you have to look at every component inside the device. So the ceramics and the elements and the metal and the glass, is all that going to be approved for vaporization? We expect that once Germany makes a decision and approves a device, that will be able to roll through the entire continent. There will be others that would follow, but the first movers, I think, will have a really good advantage there. Now, on the other end of things, HHC, Delta 8, it's really not very much regulated right now. What we saw in Berlin, we got friends in the Czech Republic. So those are the same type of vape devices that we use here, and so that they get supplied through London and some other suppliers in Amsterdam that we know.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I mean, a lot of the things we've spoken to people in the past who have made a device and they've had it medically signed off by Germany, and it's all about the fact that it delivers something that's measurable and consistent, all the things that you'd expect from a medical device. Those are the basic requirements. And it's particularly interesting looking at the differences. CE marking in its own way is a bit of a misnomer, because CE marking is a self-approval process, but it can still be externally audited and looked at, which is kind of confusing. And now in the UK, we have UKCA as a replacement for CE. And all of a sudden you start to get into the nitty gritty, it becomes considerably more complicated. But Europe-wide, I think you're right. If you can get it done in Germany, then in mainland Europe, you're really not going to struggle once it's approved there.
And it's not only the vape devices either, Jamie. It's also the machinery, and the facilities are going to have to be GMP certified, pharmaceutical grade, and machinery won't even be able to be used inside there unless they have a CE certification on there. We're only probably 2 months away from finishing our CE. It's been a huge effort for us, and we had to first start to get the North American certification for the CETL US, which is Canadian, and US markets. And then once we have our CE, we'll be able to be certified to go into those facilities. They'll all be clean room. The filling operations will be nothing like what we see here in the US. They will be much more clean. You won't be able to take a whole rack of cartridges out of a box in foam and stick them on a machine and start filling them. That's just not going to happen. So we're really looking forward to that, because in our opinion, and glad you could hop in, I think that's going to set the standard for high quality U.S. manufacturing as well.
Yeah,
which we will be seeing, once we have any kind of federal activity here.
No, it's interesting. It's almost a mirroring of, a newer market effectively back at itself once you federally catch up and once Europe does the same. It's fascinating.
Yep.
exactly.
I was going to say, is there such a, I mean, if we're talking about state by state, are there just broad differences between how you can do something in Oregon versus California versus Kansas versus Ohio? Is it there's no standard in that respect, even for just something like, filling cartridges? There's no, I mean, there's obviously the process is, similar, but are there standards that they need to adhere to that are just set state by state, or is there nothing, or does it vary?
Manufacturing standards are not as stringent as they should be. If we had the FDA involved, and if we had federal legislation towards legalization, they would be more closer to, say, pharmaceutical grade. But each state does not address that. Although New York, coming online, does have some GMP requirements for fulfillment operations and what they would consider manufacturing or processing. We're yet to really see how that's going to play out, but we're hoping that will kind of set a standard. We do see a few GMP facilities here in the U.S. I don't know, Vlad, how many you know about, but I know about 3 maybe.
Yeah. It's not a massive amount, but I would say a handful of them are available, and are doing the best they can.
And in Canada, there's quite a few as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And part of that was they wanted to be able to export, out of Canada, so they needed to have an EU GMP certification. So those are the quality control inside those facilities is top notch, but there's really not a lot of them.
No, it's a minefield, and it's a developing problem, but also a developing opportunity for you guys. So it's nice to hear that there's a perspective on Europe that is neither hyped up, which I think a lot of the time happens, certainly when it comes to cannabis products, but also that is pretty realistic, and then also reflects back on what you guys are hoping to achieve and hoping to deliver more with your own products. So it's really interesting to hear about.
And it's the quality of the medicine and the quality of the device that delivers the medicine. With some of the companies that we've spoken with, the best way to deliver cannabis medicine is through vape, because it's, your effect is pretty much instantaneous, as opposed to ingestion, which is going to take a little while and you can't quite always get your dosing right. So it's really important to us to be able to support this industry as much as we can worldwide.
It's that precision aspect as well. It's like, if it says it's got X number of milliliters, it needs to have that specifically, in order that people have that visibility of what they're actually doing and what it contains. And that need for transparency, I guess, that comes down to the smallest details, right? And that's really encouraging to see. And that's really part of your process, right?
Yeah. And the need for dosing, Dave, is really a critical thing. If somebody just needs to be able to, say, vape a small amount, say 15, 20 milligrams, if that's what it's going to be, it's hard to control, because what they do now is they'll do it by, say, temperature or voltage on the battery. But to be able to have a device that will only dose that amount, there's very few out there right now that are available. And then they would have to get approved as well for the market. And I'd love to be able to see something like that come out, because that way, you're taking the exact amount of the prescribed medicine for you every single time. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's slightly controversial to say, okay, to what extent do you feel like more needs to be done by different companies in order to make, it's almost kind of like, again, the expectation is you think regulations will kind of come along and everyone will have to adhere to them. The reality is probably very different. But again, in terms of ensuring top quality product, medicine, whether it's for rec use, for medical use, whatever, do you feel like the industry, maybe domestically or on a global scale, still has a long way to go in order to kind of reach those, the stringent requirements that that are necessary?
The way that the industry started out here, I think the U.S. industry still has a ways to go because we are still in the process of self-regulating ourselves. So we have rules that pretty much came into place as we found out that different things are, hey, maybe this is not the best practice. So then you set rules for it. The great thing about the European market we're seeing is you guys are starting out with a good set of rules. Which should help you avoid a lot of the mistakes that we've made. And I still think there's a lot of improvement that we're going to be doing on our end in the US, but we're really hopeful with what the European market is looking like because, even though I'm not a big fan of rules, it's great to start off with some guidelines that will protect society. And I believe that's what you guys are doing.
So I think it'd be really interesting. I mean, again, the hype about Germany is there for a reason. Everyone's like, okay, thinking about, how do you kind of evolve a sector from scratch? A legal sector, I guess, from scratch. How does that build? What do you need to put in place? And having been there, visibly, there seems to be nothing. There's not even kind of like, it's got to come from, it's got to be built from the ground up. And that'll be really, really interesting to see. And the ramifications that has for other nations and like, oh, Germany's doing that in that way. Should we do that or tweak it slightly? And again, but at least I always think in the US, you're doing it. It's happening. It's live, whatever you want to say about, oh, maybe we should do it, like you're doing it. And sometimes you got to break the eggs to make an omelet, right?
That's one of the great things about the market because it is living. It is happening. We're not waiting and theorizing about what could happen and what should happen. We're living it and we're changing it to story as it's happening.
And what we're seeing internationally, I think, is really getting closer to where everybody will be eventually in the U.S. Helios Therapeutics out of New Zealand is already, and they are, they're setting a standard, and they're not the only one. There's a few companies from New Zealand, and we have met people from Austria, Switzerland. They have GMP pharmaceutical grade processing facilities. They're able to make even, HHC if you want it, and THC distillate. They're already certified and ready to go. The market would open up if it's, an adult use recreational in Germany and then move out to other companies or countries in Europe. It's the vape devices is really where it needs to narrow down right now. And we'll probably see something, I think, within the next year that will be approved prior to the legislation going into place. And my expectation, I don't know what you think, Vlad, is it'll probably only be one to start with.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a big list, and rightfully so, right? They're going to do the best that they can to approve one and just see how that actually works out.
And I'm not even convinced that some of these manufacturers can actually do it right now.
Yeah,
they do have certifications for their manufacturing facilities, some of the ones we've spoken with, but the materials is the critical thing. And they don't really even know what the material specifications are yet. The manufacturers, that is. And Vlad and I have a little bit of an idea, but we've been trying to work on locating, a device that will be compliant. And so we're watching that evolve right now.
Absolutely. I mean, what do I have? I have I have the medical cannabis in the UK, and I have the kind of the PAX vaporizer for the dry herb. I mean, that's something very different again. And, thinking about, the Stores and Bickle, kind of the volcano things that I've seen, and it's like, when I spoke to them, and it's like, that's a medically approved device. It's like, whoa, they've got the budget to make that happen, I guess. But I guess a lot of other kind of smaller producers don't, and it'll be interesting to see how, it's that whole talk about that brand experience, talk about, again, there's a difference between medical and recreational, and will they look like the same thing? Will they be different things, or will they be exactly the same thing with a different brand on? I mean, again, it's it's all to play for in a way, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But
yeah, I expect, Dave, that it'll probably be the same. They're gonna work on from the vaporizer. From the oil vape side, I think they're gonna certify devices to be used in the medical market, which will translate over into the adult use recreational market, and then there won't be anything else allowed. We were together in Berlin. We saw 5 or 6 vape manufacturers or vape distributors that are on the floor at the expo. I don't know if any of them will qualify, right, Vlad?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think that it's going to be a big fight ahead of them if they're really serious about qualifying. But as they stand right now, I don't believe they will.
Interesting. And I think, is it just really because of the process, the stringent requirement and how much documentation? I mean, I know, well, I don't know, but I've spoken to people who work in sort of medical device sector, and the needing to get things signed off. I mean, it's some rigorous testing. That you don't just sort of rock up and go, hey, do you want to check this? Mr. or Miss Pharmacist, and hey, yeah, what's good? We'll stock it. It's it's a huge undertaking, a huge financial and time and compliance cost. So again, these things don't. That's why it's kind of like, it's not a surprise that someone like Stores and Bickle, because they can get that regulation because they're owned by Cannabis Growth. But you know what I mean. And it'll be interesting. I mean, is that the same sort of thing in the US, do you think, as in this side of the pond, the idea of the sort of to actually get a device approved for medical use?
We're not seeing it at all.
No.
Same devices.
The same thing.
The devices do get tested for things like heavy metals, but we're not seeing anything that would actually certify a device. Right. There's no CE. Certification here.
So just it's interesting. So, what are your kind of hopes for the sort of the market? Just to kind of wrap things up in terms of what you guys are doing. What kind of change do you see? I mean, other than just broad sweep legalization at some point, obviously. What's exciting for you guys? What's happening kind of next? What were you looking forward to?
I think that on the medicinal side, having formulations that are designed for specific ailments for people is really kind of a key thing. So, not just CBD, but if you're going to need some CBN, CBG, THC, a mixture of these, we've seen, Israeli companies that are formulating these. They're doing some processing in Malta. I think getting medicine to the people is really a key thing. On the recreational side, vapes are extremely discreet. They're highly portable. They're functional. They work really, really well. So, we'll be seeing a huge explosion in that market, I think, over the next couple of years in Europe.
Very cool. You concur, Vlad, or do you have any counterpoints?
Yeah. I think one of the most exciting things that I'm looking forward to with this industry is the rosin, like I was mentioning to you, and the live resin, and that becoming more of the norm, and maybe getting away with just a distillate product. It shows a lot of maturity in the industry. It shows that people are ready for the next level of understanding with the plant. And then the second thing is, as Jamie mentioned, the reflection of this industry in the US reflected back to us from Europe, being able to learn and grow together.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Well, thank you very much, both to Hogan and to Vlad. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll speak to you again. It's been an education. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right.
Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
And we'll speak to you soon. All the best. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.